Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with James Tynion IV on Detective Comics. Previously, I spent a long time on Rise of the Batman, because that was 2 issues too long. Maybe 3. Overall, I didn't think it was that different from the Eternal series in a lot of respects, except now Tim Drake is fake dead. I'm basically skipping over the next 2 issues immediately after it, because it's part of someone else's 6-issue crossover story.
Night of the Monster Men was a 6-part story between Batman, Nightwing, and Detective Comics, largely written by Steve Orlando, with some assistance by the title writers proper. A hurricane is approaching Gotham, and Hugo Strange decides now's a good time to unleash some mutated giant monsters onto the city. And while the Power Rangers would be useful in this situation, don't worry, Batman apparently had the foresight to weaponize buildings for such an occasion, and uses Clayface like a much tinier Megazord, so I guess it balances out. And for some reason, teenager Duke Thomas looks a lot like he's in his late 20s. Even though it involved events I didn't read and characters I didn't know, like Gotham Girl, it wasn't too bad, even for a cross-title story likely intended to boost sales half a year into Rebirth. Decently paced and developed, but a few head-scratchers, like one part about a virulent sludge making people violent, where Casino and Spoiler Alert just kind of figure out how it's spreading and how to stop it. They're just botanists all of a sudden, and it's kind of weird.
While not quite enough for me to gauge how I feel about Orlando as a writer overall, he was still far more entertaining than Tynion. So with that in mind, let's resume his run with the beginning of The Victim Syndicate, because I clearly hate myself.
Why does this always happen? Why does this always happen to me?
Issue number 943. Who is the first victim?
Of James Tynion IV, clearly the written word.
Shown through security footage and police questioning of eyewitnesses, Lucius Fox was in Wayne Enterprises doing a phone interview with Vicky Vale concerning the company paying for reconstruction after the monster attack. 4 people emerge from an elevator, one limiting sound, another poisoning cops to death with a gesture, and their dramatically dressed leader.
We wish to file an official complaint.
Your vending machine stopped carrying those cheeseburger Doritos.
Much later, after the fact, Batwoman confers with Renee Montoya in front of graffiti declaring no more bat symbol. So they have a problem with graphic design? Renee says people are scared because the police were so powerless against the monster attack, with some intending to protest an upcoming GCPD fundraiser because the bat signal sits atop the station. Incidentally, the Metaperps didn't steal anything. Not money or possessions, didn't even hurt anyone besides, those dead cops. Montoya can sense something amiss with her ex, but Kate won't say what it is. She leaves and reports in to Batman, who's unsuccessful in getting Jacob Kane to talk because he really doesn't fear his nephew. Batwoman mentions that Spoiler Alert has been distracted lately and wonders if she can be the soldier she was after the loss of Tim.
Do you really think I needed to be reminded of that? Do you really think I would ever forget?
But how else can the reader feel sad if she doesn't make you sad with your sad face of sadness? Sad!
Also, the soldier she was? She really wasn't all that exemplary, didn't really stand out, so this feels overly hammy. After we see Tim's memorial, which gets a striking pose for some reason, take that, Jason Todd's memorial, we go to Leslie's clinic, where Steph is talking with volunteer Harper the Mistake. See, Dr. Tompkins' character is being assassinated yet again. She wouldn't let Roe near those poor patients unless she wanted to portray the whole first do no harm thing.
And no, Harper not being Bluebird at the moment doesn't make up for Batman and Robin Eternal. Not by a freaking long shot. You don't get to make a giant mess and ignore it, and then pretend you didn't make a giant mess.
Especially when Stephanie is saying that Harp may have done the right thing by abandoning crime fighting, since the blonde isn't sure how much help they are anymore. The classic superhero conundrum, only dumber because her boyfriend died, saving hundreds of lives. So, of course, that brings into question how many people are saved by superheroes. Oh, and in true Harper fashion, she makes the conversation about herself, because Tim was helping her with electrical infrastructure. Totally natural for a narcissist. The blue-haired disease convinces Steph to keep her promise to join Cass at the police gala, though I don't know why any of them would be going outside of the costume work. A strange figure is briefly seen on a lamppost before disappearing. Cassino and Basil are training in the mudroom, where the biggest, ugliest villain is requested, and those subjective parameters given to a machine conjure a facsimile of Clayface. This disturbs Carlo, and Orphan ends the simulation, telling him that's not who he is anymore. I can see the emotional manipulation isn't letting up anytime soon.
That was sappy, manipulative drivel.
Good thing they never explain anything about how the mudroom really works, or Tinian would have to put effort into making it make any blasted sense for someone thinking about it for more than 30 seconds. He'd actually be a more subtle writer if every comic was just page after page, 2-page spreads of pictures of Tinian with a speech bubble ordering the reader to cry.
Also, this is the first time we see these two alone together, so what basis does Casino have for an informed opinion on the former supervillain? Bruce and Kate arrive at the gala, driving past anti-Bat protesters, and she says her cousin has been avoiding the team lately, and should seek psychiatric help, one she wants to verify. Additionally, there's unfinished Belfry tech that only Tim knew what was designed to do. A minor typo, but given all the other problems, it's almost quaint. Anyway, Bruce came to the gala expressly to meet someone qualified to maintain the base, Luke Fox, who... if having an armored suit with a glowing chest didn't feel enough like Tony Stark, he arrives in a flying sports car with a woman on each arm and basically throws money around, and apparently has his own company now.
I don't follow the character, so I don't know if this is how he's always supposed to have acted, even though it never really came up in Batman Eternal. It could be a rebirth-related retcon for all I know. In any event, this feels like it's practically begging for a lawsuit from Marvel.
Stephanie and her former owner arrive.
Stop drooling, Harper. Absolutely not.
She's drooling because she sees her own reflection. The only other reaction she could possibly have is thinking it's another her, and then start arguing with the reflection on which one of them is more perfect than the other.
Cassino arrives with Basil as her +1. Steph, being an idiot, mentions out loud for all to hear that it's Clayface, but good now, and they all proceed to the gala. Though the shapeshifter seems to have a bit of a facial malfunction. Not sure why, if he's wearing his little gauntlets. But don't worry, if you're thinking they're going to address this later, they don't. Luke announces that he plans to provide GCPD with non-lethal weaponry capable of dealing with Gotham's worst criminals, and expresses pride that Gotham is where Batman hangs his cape. Bruce pulls him aside, and after a failed flirtation with his cousin, Kate pulls Bruce further aside. She's skeptical of the young Fox, since he's all over the tabloids, became an MMA fighter, and isn't sure what he's really faced that they should trust him. It's sort of fair, but she also ignores the counterpoint of how Bruce Wayne is perceived to the public. Almost like she's ignoring there might be more to Luke than meets the eye. An explosion precedes the introduction of the Victim Syndicate, declaring Batman and any of his enablers to be the real villains for ruining their lives, and they're going to return the favor.
Tinian already beat you to it, and trust me, you cannot do worse than he has.
Number 944. Conveniently, Harper has dragged 3 blindly obedient followers with her to the garage, Steph, Cassino, and Carlo, who doesn't seem to have his power dampeners, oddly enough. She wanted to ogle Luke's flying car some more because, again, somehow all things must be about her. Clayface doesn't even hesitate taking a bunch of orders from a brat he just met to pry open a door. Suddenly, out from the blue car that was red last issue, alright, a bunch of drones fly out.
I swear I didn't do anything.
You never do, yet we're expected to believe you're something you're not. Like, useful, necessary, unique, interesting, a good character, a good person, or worth the ink it takes to put you on a page.
Batwoman radios the team to suit up as Luke is among many people running from the Syndicate. Only he's doing it out the window so his armor pieces can form his suit. Yep, not at all like Iron Man.
Shh, you wanna get sued?
The first victim, the one in red, shows familiarity with Renee Montoya, claiming to be aware of all the so-called protectors of Gotham. After a smokescreen is spread, spoiler alert, and Orphan take out the guy in green and the woman ripping off Scarecrow from the Arkham video games. Though he was kind of ripping off Freddy Krueger in a way, but anyhow. Batman attacks the leader, who's got a protective force field and claims the cops will die if the group is attacked further. Batman orders everyone to pull back and for Batwing to clear the smokescreen so they can talk in the open. The leader is hurt when Batman doesn't recognize them in clearer lighting. I'm sure the mask doesn't have anything to do with that. And when Batwoman quietly orders tranquilizer attacks, Mr. Noxious, the guy in green, is told to take out spoiler alert. On the third consecutive 2-page spread, she's hit with painful but non-fatal poisons that cause her to reboot all over the floor and display even more stupidity in her choice of masks, only covering the lower half of her face, so very, very stupid. Anyone else who moves is threatened with instant death, so Batman orders everyone to hold off. While the pale-looking Mute silences everyone else's voice, Bloodface McDrama Queen addresses the camera of a live stream, so the entire internet got a good look at Steph's face. Thanks, bad writing! The Syndicate sympathizes with the fear of Gotham's residents, given how many of them have lost homes, jobs, and loved ones as collateral damage, and formally blames the vigilantes and the police who've assisted them. Henceforth, each day Batman doesn't unmask and end his caped crusade, the Victim Syndicate will eliminate any who support and enable the Dark Knight's existence.
Yeah, does that include the Justice League? You know, the group of people that were actually just in Gotham to help after the monster attack, and filled with people that could take you all down in seconds despite being struck with nausea? Just checking.
Bats counters that Batwing interrupted the feed before that little speech and discovered the frequency of the leader's bioelectric field, which allows Batman to make with the punching. Meanwhile, Harper is berating Basil, first for not going Clayface in front of a bunch of people, and then for not helping drag spoiler alert away. Either so Ro can recondition her back as a subservient or feed on her for sustenance, I'm not sure. Orphan takes out Noxious, then is confronted by the Mute, who, even if Casino was more of a talker, what good does sound manipulation do against a punch to the face? Or a kick from Batwoman in this case. A previously less active member of the group, a short woman in her Sunday best, halts Operation Lug spoiler alert, and Carlo tells Harper to get Steph out of there.
Are you sure? I don't want to.
Of course you don't. The focus isn't on you. But she leaves, and the woman, Glory, now going by Mudface, demands to see the face of the man that destroyed her life. Instead of turning into James Tynion IV, Basil takes on his clay form.
So she recognizes him in his human form. Did he take the form of Basil Carlo? Why would he do that if he's going to a police gala? And he's wanted. And if he can't keep his human form for more than a few minutes, why doesn't he have those special gauntlets?
Glory was surprised to hear that Batman, whom she already didn't like, was working with a murderer like Clayface. And Basil tries to say it isn't him, never was. But that doesn't seem to sway her as we go to Batman confronting the first victim, but is stuck with a paralytic by Madame Crow and unable to move. Batwing swoops in to help, but then Crow releases an anti-fear toxin, so the 60 officers surrounding them will be less hesitant to react violently when she takes a gun and fires into the air, so they can make their escape in the resulting chaos. It cuts to some time later at the Belfry, where Luke exposits that officers were using Fox-Tech weaponry that had not been authorized for lethal use, so there were some bruises and injuries, but no fatalities at least. Spoiler alert is being guarded at Tompkins' clinic by Orphan and the obnoxious mistake she was forced to be centered on. I mean Harper. And Clayface seemed unsettled but didn't say why. Luke activates a round table where everyone's emblem is on their chair. Seriously, this is what I was saying about the 2-pagers just being separate portions mashed together for no reason. Anyway, a moment of awkwardness passes from him sitting in Tim's seat so they can discuss their enemies. In conjunction with their attack, they sent the cops their medical files, except their leaders. Mute suffered from an allergy attack from one of Joker's earlier laughing gas variants and needed a tracheotomy in order to survive. Madame Crow was a grad student under Scarecrow, and among his first guinea pigs. Mr. Noxious was under Poison Ivy's control for 3 months, making him toxic to anyone around him, and Mudface was a production assistant on Basil's last movie, the equally less subtly named Second Skin, when she was doused in chemicals and gained skin like Clayface's, but no control. Bats recalls them all now, and how they were in the crossfire of attacks targeting him. Side note on a couple of the emblems on those chairs.
So, spoiler alert's symbol is a purple dot inside a larger purple dot, and Orphans is a circle with stitches. How very, very unimaginative and very, very stupid.
Also, considering everyone thinks Tim is dead, Luke seems strangely upbeat about taking over maintenance of the Belfry, talking about branding and team names and such. It feels really callous, which I never got from him before. Bats tells him to familiarize himself with the system, and only making changes that have been run through him and Batwoman. She, meanwhile, is tasked with finding out how the Syndicate is moving so effectively without being seen, while he checks in on Spoiler Alert. And I hope Luke really knew who Bats was, because Kate just says his name very casually here. At the clinic, Leslie is chewing out Bruce for still having teen sidekicks, especially after Tim, and especially after finding out Drake was seeing Steph. She says Bruce needs to realize the impact he has on those who aspire to his example. Oh, and she was tasked with doing psych evaluations on the team, because she's a shrink now. And while that's going on, Stephanie gets an unexpected visit from the blood-covered first victim. Still a better sight than Harper Row. Issue 945, with Spoiler Alert accusing Batman and how everyone near him dies. You know, like his parents, that was probably his fault too, right? Also consider how many of those people end up returning somehow. Hyperbolic melodrama aside, Harper apparently spilled the beans on the first victim's visit, and at first Steph just repeats that the Syndicate will stop if Batman unmasks, as if to encourage that. Bat says he wants to help, and she throws it in his face how he helped the victims.
I woke up an hour ago, and suddenly I'm ambushed by one of my best friends and Batman.
You're withholding potentially vital information on terrorists for the same reason you're best friends with someone like Harper Row. Bad writing! She's been unconscious for hours and so far has not been told the deal about the Syndicate members' pasts. She has no reason to hold back or give them the benefit of the doubt. Her stubbornness here is ludicrous, and she's written so poorly, yet we're supposed to believe she's as good as she was when she had actual development.
Without much pause before that previous statement, she says that the first Vic apologized, how they didn't mean to hurt her, and was checking to see if she was okay. That's it. Because you can totally trust them, right? It's not at all suspicious that people that had previously swore to kill Batman's allies and fellow vigilantes stopped by for a how you doing. Bats meets up with Batwoman, says Tompkins will be doing psych evaluations, and that he wants the bullet trains ready and the entire team at the Belfry ready to pounce on the next Syndicate attack. Spoiler alert included, since she obviously knows more than she's letting on.
She's just going to wait until a few hours after half of Gotham is on fire to attempt to do something and fail to be of any help. Hey, it happened in Batman Eternal, and Tinian loves repeating himself.
Driving through Gotham, Bruce reminisces with Alfred about his earliest days in the Cape, and that there are a number of potential candidates to be the first victim. He laments he can't remember all the names of the innocent people hurt during one of his fights, though he thought he could remember them all. He isn't sure if this is about questioning his purpose or about Tim, whom they think is dead in case you forgot. On a related note, Spoiler later arrives at the Belfry roof, where her sudden boyfriend Fake died, so we can get more crying. That will hopefully make the reader cry, and that's supposed to mean this is good. Also, the roof looks pretty clean considering missiles were alleged to be used in the attack. She goes inside, meets Batwing, and I guess those chair emblems are cheap decals that just fell off. Anyway, Luke has upgraded versions of everyone's suits to counter the Syndicate, including a full face mask for Steph. Though this version has been so stupid I don't know if she'll be upset that it's more mask to pull off at the wrong time or she doesn't know up from down. Clayface is in a session with Dr. Tompkins, explaining that he was friendly with Mudface back when she was Glory Griffin. Then, after he changed and she tried to reason with him, he subjected her to the chemicals that altered him. When she confronted him last issue, she handed him a photo album of all his victims. Because the moral center of his brain disintegrates while he is in his clay form, he doesn't really remember all the faces. He begins questioning if the team is only doing harm and why Batman picked him if he's so unstable.
You might be a ticking time bomb, but we have a softball team championship next week, and you're the best outfielder we have.
Spoiler alert meets Casino outside Leslie's office. They hug, because that fixes all the stupid this writer has wrought, and the doctor asks her in for a chat. Let's give it the old college try. This stirs up a memory of Tim looking at university pamphlets.
I'm not in college, Dr. Tompkins. I'm a superhero, remember?
Well, you used to be both, but hooray for terrible regression and stupid retcons, am I right? Batwoman has it out with Batwing, saying this is all a hobby for him. He fails to understand the costs of their work and only fights for himself, which totally sounds fair to a guy she doesn't know and once got buried alive for at least a few hours, if not a couple of days. Harper talks with Jean-Paul at the clinic chapel, worried about Steph, and claims she never made friends easy.
Yes, you did, you liar.
Okay, that is the lie. That's the big lie.
The only reason any version of Cass, Tim, Steph, anyone are your friends is because terrible writing willed it to be done easily. You are a petulant, arrogant, self-involved, narcissistic egomaniac that constantly treated other people as beneath you because of convenient skills that same terrible writing gave you. The friendship with these characters is based solely on their fealty to you, with you offering nothing in return, unless some hack needs people to cry and think you've had an arc. You have no likable qualities, you've shown little to no humility, and more often than not, find a way to make everything about you. Pre-Flashpoint, none of the Bat allies would be your friend because you are not a good person. This moping act falls flat because everything it's based on is a lie.
And with that out of my system, at least for the time being, she doesn't know how to help Stephanie, and Jean-Paul, being vaguely religious, suggests putting goodwill and good intentions into the world. And that's when the Syndicate shows up. Valley grabs his sword hidden in the stone pulpit, maybe ceramic, but anyway, he fights them off. Meanwhile, in Steph's psychiatric session, she says that she's actually really smart. Though under Tinian, that myth has been thoroughly and completely busted, claiming that she, Casino, Kate, and Clayface were brought in to be controlled by Batman, as they're either connected to or are villains that have tried to kill him. They're kept too busy to question the impact of their actions, all to make themselves feel better.
Why else would you put on a costume rather than hand out cups of soup?
Yes, many a bank robbery and murder spree could have been avoided in Gotham had the Dark Knight handed Joker, Two-Face, or Poison Ivy some minestrone. Crime would be eradicated entirely if he sprang for Campbell's Chunky.
When Leslie asks if anything she's saying might have come from something the first victim said, Steph realizes this is an interrogation, uttering a code revealing Batman behind a holographic wall. 'Cause, she's so smart and everything. She accuses him of only pretending to care about others, that this whole crusade is about making himself feel better, regardless of the cost others suffer. She doesn't forgive him for Tim's death, and is afraid the Syndicate is right about him. Luke enters, saying that the terrorists in question have been sighted at the clinic, so Bats leaves, grounding spoiler alert from the mission. So she heads to the mudroom and talks to a clay construct of Red Robin. Bring Orphan in and we've got the soulless facsimile trifecta. Number 946 jumps back 3 months, where Batman and Double R have yet to convert Old Wayne Tower from a former Court of Owls base into the Belfry. Tim is excited for some long-held ideas to become reality, envisioning a future where fear is used less in favor of showing forgiveness for those on a dark path. After a history lesson of the bell, called Justice because in the olden days it would ring whenever a verdict was reached, Bruce thanks his young sidekick, acknowledging how he'll falter when it comes to trusting others, and Drake promises to be at his side for those moments.
So did Tim just never tell Steph about his ideas for more compassionate crime fighting? What measures are they, anyway? Are we just supposed to remember that everyone thinks he's dead and feel sad some more?
The team arrives at the clinic and splits up, Bats crashing through a window where he encounters Azrael, all suited up even though he was in his civvies before. He says his wrath had no effect on them, but maybe they got tired of waiting for him to change and just wandered off. He goes to look after the 200-plus people in the building as Pointy Ears calls out the group. The first victim shows up, and Bats tries to be understanding, pleading to make things better before they get anyone else hurt. The offer is rejected. Despite the chaos of people evacuating, Harper is still able to hold a rather lengthy text conversation with Steph, but she's busy with Mud Tim. This plot device, is a limited response program, accessible only for Spoiler Alert and its creator, adaptable and may be able to learn from the conversation. She elaborates that the first Vic asked why she fights, and she couldn't think of an answer. While roped into it because of her newer, lamer origin, she was driven to continue because of Batman and now questions if they do any good at all, though the harm is more visible. She cries as she recalls talking with Tim about the world they wanted, and Mud Tim asks what kind of world she wants. We jump to Clayface confronting Glory, getting insightful out of nowhere about how making others afraid made her less scared, and that she can't see her true self beneath her deformity. So he hands her his gauntlet, which reverts her to human form before zapping her unconscious.
I'm still not sold on Clayface's turn to the good guys. His remorse for his actions felt so out of the blue it feels as empty as a lot of other sudden events that Tinian's written to have just happened that way. I'm supposed to feel bad for him because the writer is telling me to, and for no other reason.
That woman faces Madame Crow and her painfully boring attempt at psychoanalysis that's been done better in other stories. Kate is resistant to the anti-fear gas and knocks her out, only to be confronted by Mr. Noxious. Batwing arrives, hitting him with nanobots intended to purge him of the toxins in his body. Maybe. Also, apparently Bee-Woman didn't need Luke's upgrades to resist Crow's gas because she's hardcore or whatever. Mute is about to stab Harper, which honestly doesn't seem so bad, but Orphan slips a device on his ear that plays the last message of his wife, who was killed by the Joker.
That's so sad.
I agree with you in theory. In theory, communism works. In theory.
Seeing as how his story was exposited to us, it was kind of forgettable. I actually had to double check to make sure what his deal even was. This was just another cheap maneuver to evoke emotion from the reader, because the more sensible thing to do in this situation would have been to have used the elements of surprise, sneak up on him, knock him out, and restrain him. But that's what Cassandra Cain would have done, and she's not here right now.
As their fight continues, and having started a little bit of a fire, Bats is apparently holding back against the first victim, who claims to represent everyone hurt by his war on crime. But Pointy Ears isn't having it. Both will have to answer for what they've done, he says, when the others arrive to block the victim's escape. And I guess piled the other syndicate members together? I don't know, the panels are small and not very detailed. Bloodface postures more about what Batman has made the world. There's this odd panel of him holding his chin. Then he tells Batwoman to call the cops. But it's not over, according to Spoiler Alert, stunning everyone on their radios and declaring she may be the only one who can fix what's wrong in the world.
No thanks. I've seen how a Tinian-scribed Stephanie Brown fixes things, and the world has enough problems as it is.
947, the cover of which gives Orphan the build of a barrel-chested man despite she's apparently a 15-year-old girl in this continuity. Weird. But her entire origin is a pile of sewage, so whatever. Spoiler Alert proceeds to pick off the team one by one, activating the taser rangs in Batwoman's belt, using a sonic device to incapacitate Clayface, and disabling Batwing because it's linked to a network she apparently helped Red Robin build.
Her tech skills aren't nearly well established enough for this to work, so this is just her being conveniently skilled and cool just to look skilled and cool. It makes more capable and experienced characters look like morons. It's infuriating, but not remotely surprising given this writer.
Casino pulls off her mask, all the better to show off sad face, and she gets gassed from Spoiler Alert's gauntlet, which of course she couldn't see coming because it's not like she reads body language or anything. Oh, wait a minute. Steph claims to be trying to save everyone.
Your life shouldn't have to be like this.
I agree, but Tinian refuses to learn from his mistakes, or how to develop characters, or how to show instead of tell. Add in who is running DC, of course that combination would screw up her life.
She says she can't beat Batman. I guess she's out of knockout gas because Tinian has contrivance to spare, I know it. After recent events, she knows he won't hurt her. Though he can still gently restrain her, that's a thing he could do, but forget that, I guess. She's not on the side of the Syndicate either, because they became what they said they hated, hurting and killing people in the process. But they were at least right about the destruction caused by Batman's presence. Tompkins' clinic is in ruins, and its patients, from the giant monster attack that targeted Batman, are cowering in the streets. The first victim says this is the impact Batman has on the world and asks if he's happy.
Of course I'm not happy.
How could he be, given who's writing him? He admits he failed the victims and pledges to help them get the help they need. But that's not good enough for Spoiler Alert, who threatens to send all his bat data to the police, revealing everyone's identities, unless everyone hangs up their capes and cowls now. She figures this would solve everything. Clayface might be cured, Batwoman could train police officers, Casino could get foster parents, but Batman refuses, since that's not the world they live in. The others have recovered and tried talking sense to Steph, how the bat symbol inspired Luke to be more than he was, how Clayface doesn't want to be a monster anymore because reasons, but she isn't budging. Kate knocks away her device as the police arrive, and since bats won't stand down, Stephanie commits to standing in his way.
I am convenience. I am stupidity. I am Spoiler Alert.
She hops on her cycle and takes off, but not before taking off her mask and crying, which we don't even need her to take her mask off for, because stupid. 3 days later, Basil is visiting Glory in her cell at Arkham, mentioning attempts to depower Mute and Noxious, while apologizing how he specifically hurt her. He even offers to visit officially on a timely schedule to discuss whatever, and she seems fairly amenable to that. Carlo's still not wearing his power suppression tech, so how is he keeping his form? Bruce and Kate check in on the first victim, who has no fingerprint or DNA matches, and a face so disfigured the orderlies left the mask on. Convenient. They may never know their identity, which would matter if the character was interesting. Despite all this, Batman wants to continue the program, using plans Tim laid out and even look into recruiting Azrael and Harper Row, who'll probably say no, but since he's Tinian's not-so-secret favorite, of course it had to be brought up anyway. Batwoman seems to be warming up to Batwing after his speech, and suggests including him in the plans. On a less pleasant note, Bats wants her to talk to her dad.
Are we or are we not getting together for 4th of July family barbecue? I'm supposed to be prepared for anything, and I need to know what sides everyone is bringing.
The two bats are apparently so similar that Bruce can tell that Kate is closing off, and after losing 2 people he cares about, he doesn't want to lose her too. Was the second one Stephanie? 'Cause I never got an indication he cared about her on the same level as Tim. Not that he has to like or hate her either way, but whatever, friggin' drama. Spoiler alert, out without her mask because she's such a genius, ripped out some wires from the bat signal, which was noticed after a reported shootout, but because we have to pretend there's a point here, police managed to handle it without anyone getting hurt. You know, like all shootouts. Batman doesn't want her taken down or anything, since it turns out her phone had no bat data info package at all. It was all a bluff so she could be heard and see if Bats and crew would make the right choice. And I guess Steph used a different phone because she has one now with a photo of her and Tim, as well as a text from Harper.
Please, Steph, please respond. Casino and I are looking for you everywhere.
Technically, she's wandering the streets aimlessly, and I'm looking in my immediate vicinity, and since I don't see you, I have to assume you don't exist anymore.
She does the only smart thing this version of the character ever has done, and ignores Roe. As Bats says, he'll keep an eye on Steph, keep her from anything too dangerous, but won't silence her. He believes in everyone's best selves, so as to prove her wrong, but doesn't want to forget those that get hurt in their fight, needing to adapt accordingly. Somewhere, very far away, Tim Drake has disassembled his gear, constructing a device capable of breaking open his cell. He creates a smokescreen and exits, I guess getting dressed pretty quickly, while sending a distress signal. He doesn't get far before being zapped back, ever watched by Mr. Oz, who says Red Robin may not understand now, but he will soon enough.
That was the Victim Syndicate, and I must say this story is an absolute crime.
The idea of a group formed by people harmed by the actions of villains out to get Batman sounds great. In fact, Peter J. Tomasi used it in the first year of the New 52 on the Batman and Robin title, issues 10 through 12. So, as with many things, Tynion has taken a pre-existing idea and done it worse. Tim wanting to try more compassionate, less violent crime-fighting measures is fine. Questioning how good the Dark Knight really is for the city can be an interesting question to explore, but this story doesn't explore it very much at all. It's all the dramatic, maudlin, negative points about collateral damage without any real counterpoints supporting Batman's mission. Sure, Luke tells the tragic story of a black kid being unjustly killed and how he was inspired by what the bat symbol meant. Clayface wants to atone because... potatoes? I don't know, but that's about it. The story doesn't confront you with the fact that if Batman wasn't around, more people would die in a Joker or Poison Ivy attack. You get one mention of Bruce Wayne paying for the expenses of a widower, but what about the charities and social programs he funds? Or was that retconned out? It doesn't suggest that regardless of wanting to target a specific vigilante, these supercriminals are still making their own choices that endanger human lives. If they're supposed to be off the hook because bats foiled their bank robbery or planned to blow up an old folks' home, is Pointy Ears himself absolved because of what a single thug with a gun took from him when he was a kid? What about the criminals who aren't simply damaged and need compassion and chance? The ones that just get a kick out of breaking the rules and making life worse for others and won't accept or be swayed by kindness or empathy? Maybe it'll come up later, but Tynion just neglects details and story points he establishes all the time, leaving them unexplained, so why should I think this is going to be any different?
There's a conversation to be had here, but obviously Tynion wasn't interested. It was all about getting people misty-eyed, which feels more and more like distractions to his missteps and refusal to improve.
Aw, this person's sad. That person's sad. Sad thing happened. Oh look, Tim and Steph were dating, Casino hugging, spoiler alert, and Harper saying they're her friends. All of which is shallow bunk, because again, their relationships have no basis other than Tynion wants it, or these two were friends, these two were dating before, so accept that part of their good history without the rest of it being canon anymore. Tynion wants to use things previous writers took time and care to establish, but he doesn't want to put in the effort to establish it himself.
Wow, that's really lazy.
There's no real development at work here. It all has to be stated in exposition, exposition, exposition. Mudface was the only member of the group I could really remember because they actually bothered to show a little bit of her backstory. The others are forgettable as a result, even with some flashy powers, and the most forgettable is their leader. Spikes, covered in blood. If that's supposed to be blood, it should be dry by now, but anyway, it looks like a proto-Batman Who Laughs, or a reject from a 90s Image comic. Or both. Also, could they just not make another device to let Glory return to normal for a while? Carlo seems inconsistent in his need of it, until the next time he says he can't hold his form for long.
As to that scene of spoiler alert disabling everyone but Batman, for some that may be either an impressive display, or for fans of the character before the reboot, a kind of validation of her skills. I disagree, and not just because she lost her development thanks to DC's higher-ups, and Tynion.
It goes back to the writer's nasty habit of telling rather than showing. He throws in dialogue to suggest Steph is really smart, but doesn't prove it. And no, I'm not counting vague computer jargon Tynion gives to just about anyone. She doesn't behave smart. Her entire Batman is bad now routine isn't smart. But say she did some computer stuff off panel, that must mean she am smart. I get she wanted to get everyone's attention, but the idea that this version of the character could incapacitate them all so easily is laughable. She could have led with the bluff about the Batcave data and sending it to the police without assaulting her supposed friends. She could claim some failsafe Tim told her about. Everyone gets their speech in before she runs off. Maybe it was their way of cramming in more action for the reader and hoping that they didn't think too much about it. Also, Mud Tim, You could have had a flashback of Steph in a relevant conversation with Tim before his fake death, but then we'd be without a cheap, stupid tease at the end of an issue.
I can't tell if things in this title are getting stupider or if there's just new realms of stupid I'm not accustomed to yet, but I've still got a ways to go before I'm through. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.